From beyond the farthest reaches of our galaxy they come. Two brains pulsing with a strange energy. These space brains come to share their love of science fiction movies. Hi, welcome to Space Brains. Tonight we have a very special episode. We managed to catch up with the writer and director of the movie Occupation, Luke Sparke.
I'm sorry, and this is Mark.
Hiya.
We watched and reviewed Occupation a couple of weeks ago, and that was a film that was released in 2018. It's on Netflix globally, as I understand it. It's written and directed by Luke Sparke, and we have additional dialogue by Felix Williamson. It's a film about a small group of residents in an Australian town that confront an alien invasion and, I suppose, bring us home to victory at the end of it. It was great.
Yeah, so we've got Luke on tonight's episode. Mr. Luke Sparke. He's a writer, he's a director, he's a producer, TV and feature films. He's written and directed 3 feature films, as far as IMDb tells us. Red Billabong, Occupation, and then we've got the exciting release of Occupation Rainfall, which is due out October 2020. Luke is got an extensive history of working in costume and wardrobe department of many large-scale TV and film productions before moving into his own film projects. But of course, Luke's here. Hiya, Luke. How you doing?
Not bad.
Okay, good. And so we did look at Occupation a few weeks ago, and it's a Space Brains episode where we really enjoyed it. What did you like about it, Surrey?
A couple of things I really liked about it was the epic size and scope. It was a military rebellion fantasy, which certainly as a teenager I had plenty of my own. It made me remember movies like Red Dawn. I don't know if that's coming. Well, I'm going to ask you about that. And also even like zombie movies where people, Dawn of the Dead, they're like in a shopping centre and they're sort of fighting back against this overwhelming force. It's got this great sort of ambition and action and great cast of characters that really sort of, tell the story of, I suppose, relatively ordinary people having to stand up to a science fiction threat.
Yeah,
definitely. I liked that grand scale, especially we don't see that a lot in Australian film. So that was something that I specifically really liked, was just that massive grand scale. I think the action scenes were fantastic, or exciting, the really good special effects. I enjoyed all that part. As a writer myself, I really appreciated the structure of the beats. So I felt that we had our inciting incident. I felt that the pace went through things like the debate and moving into the second act and that midpoint. So I, as someone that appreciates those beats, I really enjoyed that. I also really liked, like with the science fiction, how the aliens invaded, and it was really quick. Sometimes we find these alien invasion films, it takes a long time for the aliens to finally show up. Maybe the spaceships are there and they blow up cities and stuff, but I really liked, when they came out of the cornfield, that was something that, there was a few, the cane fields. Something that, I keep saying cornfields because we're so used to that American image, I think, of cornfields. You say cane, Queensland makes a lot of sense of the cane fields. But I felt that pace of the aliens coming was really cool. And the costumes, I thought, when we finally did see those aliens, it was a really cool version.
That was some of the best sort of alien costumes you're going to see around for a while.
I think so, definitely. And then my final really good thing was...
We're
excited about that.
I've seen the teaser trailer on YouTube. It looks
Aliens 2.0 and 3.0 and
Excellent. That's exciting. So I enjoyed them in the first one. So if you're saying they're even better, that's something to look forward to. And then I think that final thing, to me, the film is hope. And this is something that we always question as well, is like, what kind of film do we think this is? And I think that idea, to me, that there's hope that, as the film progresses, we get those glimpses that the aliens are kind of like us. They're invading, but, you have that scene where the aliens helped each other, and there was one that held one in their arms, and there was a child. I think it was a child, that was the interpretation. There was another one like hobbling, and, the character watches that unfold. And then at the end, the fact that instead of let's just kill these aliens, no, why don't we try to work together? And they do. Those aliens agree to that. To me, there was a real hope in that, and I enjoyed that. And again, that was a real point of difference from other alien invasion stories. So
Battle Los Angeles, for example, which was all about killing the aliens and not wondering why it is they turned up in the first place.
Yeah, so that were the things I liked. So, but because we're so fortunate tonight to have Luke here, what were your kind of intentions as a filmmaker, writer of this film? What was the point of making Occupation in your mind?
Obviously, as filmmakers, you sort of get not recluse, but you're in your own little filmmaking world. Critics come out, you read the articles, you get to meet some people. I do when I go to like supernovas and Comic Cons, and that. But it's refreshing to hear your take because it's pretty much bang on. And it's you can go into a film and pick it apart. You can pick any film apart if you don't like it, you know. Even if you do like it, you know, I have friends that you get so deep into, you know, breaking films down, and you end up just breaking down every film to just what's the point, you know, because they're just movies are cool. I really enjoy movies, obviously, but it's refreshing to hear a take like that, which is pretty much bang on. Everything you just said is what I was intending. So thank you very much for understanding the film. I mean, all those points you've made, the epic scope, is what I was going for, obviously, on a limited budget compared to Hollywood films. I always used to say that our budget was probably the same budget that the Avengers had for their catering, for the whole film. So yeah, I mean, hope is definitely. I'm trying to pick what you've just said because you've dumped a lot of info. That's all right. So I'm trying to go through and pick out the points. Obviously, hope is a point of the film. I think I'm a pretty hopeful person. Like, I'll touch on the films that inspired me down, later on in the podcast and that. But I'm a bit of an optimistic person, so my screenplays usually lend to that spectrum, which is cool. The other point, the point of difference of the aliens being like us. Yeah, you have to come up with something new. There's no point just doing the same thing. And I've read some reviews that didn't like that and some audiences that didn't, but I did. I thought it was more interesting than just being like, Star Wars Episode 1 or something where you destroy the control ship and suddenly everyone's like powers down and we won the day. Because real life doesn't work like that. And being a history buff, coming up through the costume history side of military things, I always look back on real life events. So the First World War, doing Germans and British coming out and playing soccer every Christmas, or at the end of the war having to have a ceasefire because it's not just destroying everything. There has to be life afterwards. So I sort of try to apply something like that to the end of the film. And have a point of difference. So yeah, it's all about having a point of difference.
Something I thought was quite interesting also coming from an Australian perspective is this colonial concept. And I believe one of the characters points out that when Christopher Columbus and Captain Cook, I nearly called him Captain Hook, but that would have been wrong, and Australia got discovered, there was, in each case, there's people being displaced by newcomers. And in here, coming from Australia, we're sort of a little bit, I suppose, or should be a bit more sensitive to the fact that as white people, our ancestors, or some of our ancestors, turned up here uninvited and started doing whatever it is they do. And I'm wondering, how much of a role did that sort of Australian view take on the way you did this occupation?
Obviously, again, being a history buff, obviously massively aware of it, but I'm not one to politicize my movies. I don't really want to make a huge statement. I did put that little part, that little conversation in there, but I just like dropping little things and letting people like yourselves or even people after the movie coming out and having a discussion about it. If someone takes that away, great. If someone doesn't, that's cool too. You know what I mean? Like, I'd rather people walk out and have something to talk about. I think the worst thing a movie can do is when you're sitting there watching the lights go up and you turn to your friend and you go, "What's for dinner?" Like, you have to have something to talk about afterwards. Even if you hate it and someone likes it, at least there's a discussion to be had. So I try to drop little nuggets here and there, like, that's an interesting concept. Maybe you guys can talk about that, rather than really getting into like a political statement.
I got that sense too. I think I actually mentioned it during our original thing, that it was mentioned, it was made aware. So it was like, it wasn't this sort of ironic blindness to the situation, but at the same time, there was no need to go into, oh, well, aren't we then the bad guys as well? And,
Yeah, it wasn't a lecture.
because that wasn't the point of the film,
yeah.
I think.
No.
But so where did the base idea come from? Because as I understand it, the production and creation of the film was quite rapid. But the idea, was that something that came quickly, or did you...
Really, love sci-fi. And as a kid, walking out of films like Independence Day, I was the right age group to go see it when I was like an early teenager. Walking through the shopping centre, going, oh wow, I wonder what would happen if they attacked Australia. It's always been in my mind of wanting to make a movie like Red Dawn or something like that. And you're right, it happened pretty quickly. When I went to LA after Red Billabong, I was actually pitching another project. They didn't really like that pitch, and they said, "What else do you have?" I came up with it on the spot just because of the years of thinking about it, just sort of blurbed out. And then I hopped in the elevator, and my producer with me was like, "What's this movie? What's happening now?" And I'm like, it's okay. It's going to be great. And I wrote it on the plane ride home, the first draft. And then, it was supposed to just be like, sort of, let's do a cheap film in the bush with some aliens. That would be cool, right? And it ended up being a lot bigger than that, even though it's not huge, but it ended up being a lot bigger than my first draft. Suddenly, Tim Morrison's on board, and suddenly all these actors are falling in, and I was like, oh, shit, I better... scratch this script up to get the script up to scratch and really make something of this, because I got the opportunity here to do something. So it's always nice when that happens. So like you were pointing out, the structure of the film, I'm a huge fan of editing. I'm really involved in the editing process. Actually, Rainfall, I've edited the whole movie myself. I didn't in Occupation. But it's always great to discover the film in editing. I think there's a famous quote, your film sort of gives birth in your mind, he dies on the paper, gets reborn in the stage with actors, dies on, when you film it all, and then you cut up all the pieces together and suddenly there it is again. I really think you can structure, a good edit can help restructure the film. So a lot of it was finding the film in the edit, after you go out and film night after night after night of different little moments. And there's heaps of cutscenes, campfire scenes talking about the aliens and why they're here and all that kind of stuff we were discussing before. But at the end you go, do you really need this? So you end up losing that and just focusing on like the main beats of what the story I was trying to tell. Could have made a whole different story with no action at all. It could have been a whole drama of just talkies, or it could have been a whole thing of just action. But I've tried to find a good balance between the two. Yeah,
and it's definitely there. And I look, as someone that's only made a couple of short films, I know exactly that feeling that you get in the edit suite and you can tighten something one day and then you come back the next day and that question is exactly there. You go, is it needed? Or that length of it, can it just be shortened? So that's only on a short film format, but I know that feeling. Yeah,
it's always scary and sad when you have to cut something, because you go, oh. Do you think we need it? I always come back in 6 months later. Do you think we needed that scene we cut 6 months ago? And I was like, oh, we're back to this again. Start over.
How long was the editing process anyway for Occupation? What did you have?
So we finished shooting in July 2017. Well, that was pickups, but we started editing before that. And then we sort of delivered it around November. So it was quite quick for a big feature film. Yeah. But in saying that, the caveat is I took it to the American film market in November and screened it. And it was the first time I actually watched it with an audience, because it was so rush. And even I felt it was probably too long. And at the end, the note was from everyone, it's too long. And so I quickly had to come back and like re-edit it, unlock the cut, put some more effects in, added some more helicopter shots, and sort of tightened it to cut 15 minutes out of it afterwards. And that really helped. Yeah, it's one of those ones where I was like, did a director tantrum and stood my ground. I was like, no, it's going to be 2 hours 15. That's it. And then I watched it and I was like, oh, we can probably cut 15 minutes out of this film. So then it became the film that it is now. So again, cutting conversations. It's all these conversations that go first.
And can I just, because you said you were in LA pitching and then they sort of said, what else have you got? And you kind of threw an Occupation as an idea up. So were they then private investors is that how Occupation got off the ground to begin? Were they just private? I mean, you don't have to go into specific details, but
it was all private investors for Occupation, but those guys didn't come on board. Funnily enough,
right?
Came up with the idea there, but at the end of the day, I moved on with someone else. So But it was all privately financed, which is hard in on itself to have to do that at the same time.
And so with that, are they connections you have either in Queensland or Australia, or is it or through your producer? Clive Palmer, is he involved in it
Clive
somewhere along the
Palmer.
line?
No, look, obviously the first point of call, people always say Clive Palmer or the mining magnates, Gina Reinhardt. They never
Yeah, I know. No, they're never interested, are they?
no one's ever got back to me down that road. So, not saying they might not be interested, but I don't have a direct contact with those particular people. You go talk to their assistants and that.
Yeah,
but
I think Clive Palmer likes dinosaurs, doesn't he, or something?
He does. I should picture my dinosaur movie that I have.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But no, a lot from family and friends, the producers. They brought a lot on board themselves, and then just other contacts, and it starts to snowball when one person does it, then suddenly they show their friends, and they show their friends, and suddenly there's a network of people, and that's that's how that all got done.
And you didn't approach Screen Australia or anything like that with it?
Oh, like I've got no issue with Screen Australia. Obviously, they have the tax rebate, the 40% tax rebate for filming in Australia, which is a massive help for Australian films. It means that investors know they're going to get at least that much, a certain portion back guaranteed, no matter what. So that's always a good thing. So we use that, and but no, I didn't approach him for any other funding at the time. Might be different now. At the time, I just didn't think it would be their cup of tea. Sci-fi films. Maybe it's different now, and I have seen a lot more people sort of say they're looking for more action films and more sci-fi films and that, and that's a good thing. But at the time, I think just now because of the pandemic, they've opened up funding where you can go apply any time of the year, just this week. But back then it was like rounds, and you got to do like certain rounds of the year, and it just doesn't fit our structure of how we film things. We just like to just do it. Done.
Yeah. Here in WA, as one of the measures for recovery, the state government has asked for people to create a studio with soundstage, like a full, like they want to be able to run.
I saw that.
Hollywood scaled movies.
Yeah.
Here in WA.
We got to hear, Grant Spatore with I Am Mother, and he was based in Perth, but he wanted to make that in Perth, and he had the funding to go ahead, but there's no soundstage in Perth.
Yeah, right.
So it ended up getting shot in Adelaide, and so that disappointed him a lot, being a Perth guy. But suddenly the WA government now has said, as part of their recovery plan, to try to spend money, that they're interested in investing in that. So hopefully it finally gets happens.
Yeah, I've looked at shooting in Perth. Actually, someone commented on Occupation 1, we should shot in Perth, but it's just too not economical for us to fly everyone all the way over there. But definitely some great locations over there that I'd love to come and film. So I hope they do. Yeah, I've never used studios for my films. Like Warner Brothers is like 5 minutes from our office, but it's just usually booked out with bigger films, or it just is outside our budget, and it's just the way things are. So we ended up just hiring warehouses and creating our own studio.
So you're saying you're getting some actors on board, and we noticed that you've worked with Dan Ewing before and read Billabong. Was that an ongoing relationship that you got him on this film? Where did you pick up your other actors from?
Obviously, when you start working with people, it becomes like a band. You get the band sort of humor, the band jokes. People know the same people, and that's something that I'm trying to continue on with. Whether it's production designers or lighting or whoever, it's good to have the same continuity of people that you like working with. So Dan and I got along really well on Red Billabong. I actually told him that he couldn't be a part of Occupation originally because I wanted to do something new, and we shopped it around to a bunch of different Australian actors, and unfortunately a lot of them passed on the film. And then it came down to, I forget what was happening. He was going for then he was going for the role of Jackson, the younger footballer, and we're going to get someone older to play Matt to keep that older younger guy going. And then it just sort of, the last month it all kind of went topsy-turvy, and suddenly the producer's like, just get Dan, just put Dan in the thing as Matt. So he sort of ended up in there, and so that's how it sort of came back around. I go, here we go, we're back together on set. But the other cast members, like, again, it's like starts to snowball, especially when people like Tomorrow comes on. That makes a lot of other actors attract actors. So once he's on, other people put their hand up, and then Bruce Spence came on board, which was cool because obviously he's like an icon of Australian films as the alien leader. And, and Jacqueline McKenzie, I think, was the last one. I think my first AD, who's a Perth-based friend of mine, he flew over to be the first AD on this one. I think he had like her on speed dial from a film he just done. He's like, I'm going to ask Jack McKenzie for you, and text her, and that's how that starts. It's all just like conversations and just sort of luck sometimes, right place, right time. And then the other cast was all sort of through auditions and for Jackson and Rhiannon Fish from the 100. I think I just cast her because she's a really good actress, and I thought she had the chops to pull off, the character that she had. I feel bad. I feel like I killed off all my good cast. And Felix Williamson, I had worked with him on Red Billabong as well.
I know him from the Domain.com web series that he did.
Yes.
With the, what was that called? I can't remember. He always had the black and white striped shirt on. And
Yeah. He wrote, directed all that stuff as well. Pitched it to Domain.
Oh,
did like the whole thing was all his brainchild. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Cool.
Yeah.
So you made this wonderful film, which in very speedy time. Did you have any films or filmmakers' style that you were trying to emulate?
Growing up in the 80s and the 90s, obviously, it's a cliche now, but Spielberg, George Lucas, James Cameron, and Michael Bay are really sort of like the filmmakers I sort of hover around, and I'm always drawn to their style of movies. People like Michael Bay, some people love him, some people hate him, but, the guy knows how to make action movies. And so within that style, I was trying to keep in the realms of those sort of genre of directors and that, I guess all those filmmakers, whether it's Close Encounters or Star Wars or, Aliens, it's all sort of in that ballpark of, I've referenced, have the mood boards and have it all there in pre-production of all the movies I like to keep the crew sort of on the track of what I'm trying to do, not going too far one way or the other. At least that's a good jumping off point to then move on to your own thing.
Yeah, definitely. Is there sort of a legacy that you would like to leave long term then? Like you said before, finding your voice, that's a common thing for filmmakers. Like, what would your voice be, you think, is where you're leaning into now?
Well, I hope I'm still young. That legacy can be a long time. I think my legacy, I really want to try to continue making large scale films in Australia and really trying to go down that road of like being the guy that's like, wow, Luke Sparke does these massive films and they're Australian and they're filmed in Australia and not trying to be American, like they're just Australian, but big like Hollywood films. Not compete with them. Everyone always tries to say to me, you can't compete with Hollywood films. I say, well, I'm not trying to, but there is a certain taste and certain audience that like that sort of stuff. So I'm just trying to tap into that market, that some movies that I would like to go see. And you mentioned before, growing up like an escapism, boyhood fantasy of being in the rebellion. I mean, that's again exactly what I was trying to do. Like, but growing up, all my heroes are American. So I'm trying to sort of leave a legacy of maybe Australian characters that some kid might grow up, go to Comic-Con and go, I'm dressed as blah blah from a Luke Sparke film, and I'll be like, great, that's a good legacy to have, because at least then an Australian looking at an Australian, I think Mad Max is like the only one we can probably go to a sci-fi convention as at the moment. I mean, there's some obviously good Australian films. Not saying there's other ones you can't go at, but well known enough that people will go, that's Mad Max, unfortunately. I think that's where my legacy would like to be.
Cosplay.
No, I guess more bigger Australian films is what I'd like to do.
If you went onto the Reddit, the cosplay subreddit, and there was some people, as you said, dressed as the Australian sci-fi heroes, and then mission accomplished.
Yeah, it is mission accomplished. But outside the realms of sci-fi, I've still got some other bigger shows, like a World War One film and that. But it's all still kind of based on the same idea of how I do this film. It's like, I kind of like my ensemble cast. I like those old sort of, even going back further in the 80s into the 70s and 60s of the big disaster flicks, which I guess Roland Emmerich emulated as well, where like there's this big cast of characters. I kind of like those. So even in my World War One film, it's like a sprawling like platoon, kind of like the movie Platoon, but each one has their own voice and each one has a lot of characters, not really based on just like one or two guys. I just don't think I could write that. I just think my scripts always end up being like bigger than what those are. Yeah, well, that would be a style anyway then, if that's what you continue to do in your future projects. Definitely that becomes a style, doesn't it? Yeah.
And so what was the process? Were you part of it getting onto Netflix? Were you excited to hear when it got sold onto Netflix? What was that like for you?
Yeah, I mean, look, at the moment, you don't really think about it. It's just a thing now. People go, it's on Netflix. And you go, yeah. But I guess at the time, it was like a cool thing to have your film on Netflix.
Yeah.
Like, it started off in Netflix USA before it came to Australia, which in that alone, I mean, as a filmmaker, it's pretty freaking cool. I wasn't involved in the negotiations. I mean, you take it to a market and you sell the film. And I was just lucky enough that the Americans who bought the film actually saw Saban, who owned Power Rangers. That's how I knew them growing up as a kid. Saban's Power Rangers, and they sold Power Rangers to Hasbro, and then they went on this massive spending spree where they're like just buying up like heaps of cool action films, and I was like one of the first Australian films that they bought. So that was cool in itself. I met with the guys, and they actually took I took to LA one of the alien suits and dressed it on the mannequin in the AFM, the American Film Markets. When people eyes were coming in, there's this freaking alien standing there, and they said as part of the deal they wanted to keep the alien suit and put it in their lobby. And I'm like, sure, man, you want to buy my film and take my suit? Be my guest. And then they wrote to us and they're like, Netflix, we've sold it to Netflix as well because they liked it. And it debuted at number 1 that week. It came on Netflix America. My manager sent me this screenshot and he's like, look at what's number 1. And it's like a holy shit moment to be like, that's pretty cool. And through that obviously it was able to get a lot more fans, a lot more people that can watch it, open up the audience, which is always a dream come true for a filmmaker to have your film viewed that many times. Not always good. Sometimes I get drunk and go through IMDb and look at all the comments. That never ends well.
No.
IMDb or Twitter is like the devil for filmmakers. 1 star. This film is the worst movie I've seen. It's like walk out of the room all depressed. Oh my god, what have I done? Next day I'm back at work and people are like, look at the trailer for the next film. I'm like, oh, that makes me feel better.
Yeah, definitely.
I've got to say, one of the goals we have in Space Brains is this idea of joy watching films. We tend to pick films and try not to read any of the press, no critiques, don't even watch the trailers. So you're going in cold, just expecting science fiction and looking to find out what's really cool about it. Because invariably, I've gone and we watched this movie Tau, which is about a smart house. And so I went and watched that cold, and I don't know if you've seen it, but it's a really fantastic film. And then I went on and read the reviews that people were leaving, and it's like they watched a different film to me. Because I watched this film about this AI house that becomes self-aware and gains humanity and tries to help people. And they're going, oh, this movie was crap. The house didn't kill anyone with a toaster. You're like, that's not the point of the film. So if you'd gone in and read all the reviews or these weird off-center, offshoots of ideas, you kind of almost have the film told for you. Yeah. And then when you watch it, you're sort of filtering it through what other people have said, and you miss out on the real pleasure of watching the film, I think.
It's been interesting to see, like, my group of friends over the last 10 years, like, with the rise of, phones and Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb, go out to the movies and always be the people on their phones like, wait, what are you doing? I'm just looking up reviews of this movie to make sure it's good. I'm like, don't read the reviews, just go see it for yourself. But now, now they're kind of getting over that, and now they're back to almost watching it cold, which is good. Everyone's kind of getting over that. It's like, people have their opinions and just move on, which I like. So that's why I really enjoy your guys' channel, because it's just refreshing to have that joy watching.
Yeah, thank you. We do try to do that. And so we quite often pick on favourite scene. Do you have a favourite scene from your film, Occupation?
I'm going to say action-wise, I enjoy the helicopters coming in at the end. It gets me going. Also, because I'm also the helicopter pilot as my cameo. But, I think I like that scene where Tem, spoilers for people who haven't watched it, where Tem kills the alien with a blunt object. And that whole montage and that whole conversation afterwards about, why they're here and all that kind of stuff has changed. I think it's probably my favourite scene in the movie. Yeah, because it probably has that bit more of that gravitas of like something bigger than what's going on.
So you've done your little cameo there as the pilot. Are you in the other ones? Are you doing a bit of a Hitchcock? Are you sort of walking on screen in Any moments in Red Billabong or the Rainfall?
Red Billabong, I'm in like the post credit. There's a post credit scene.
Yeah.
And I'm one of the guys in that post credit scene.
Yeah.
But not in Rainfall. Too busy and too serious. But I did get to voice an alien in ADR. So
yeah, definitely. Do you have a scene that you didn't like how it turned out?
Maybe something that didn't quite land the imagery or the artistically the way you thought it would.
Maybe somewhere in the factory, and it's hard for me because I was there and I was doing the whole thing. For me, some of the stuff that are going at the factory at the end wasn't how I wanted it because of what happened on the day on the set. Like my production designer fell ill, and then next thing you know, I rock up at the factory. It's supposed to be this like turned into like a half spaceship thing, and they had just these weird cabinetry that they'd made up. It looks like you go into Baskin Robbins ice cream scoop things that they were trying to call consoles, and I just stood there and it was just like plastic sheets, and I just had to like rip everything out and like just go minimalistic, and it wasn't really what I wanted. Like it was like half being terraformed into like doorways and weird sort of stuff from Alien. So every time I watch those things I kind of cringe because I know what I kind of wanted in my head. And I guess there's more, for me, it's more that just stuff that reminds me. I watch it, I'm like, oh my God, that day was terrible.
Yeah.
rather than what's happening on the screen.
Yeah.
Well, that's actually some of the good insight that I do enjoy when I hear writers or directors talking about their films. Is that for us, we had no clue either way. I just sort of saw this abandoned factory. Although I did sort of comment, there's the plastic sheeting that every abandoned factory. It's not just yours. It's every movie anywhere I've seen. It's like whenever it goes nighttime, you have to hear the hoot of an owl, and whenever you see an eagle fly through the sky, you've got to hear that particular screech. Yeah. Even though I found out that's not from an eagle at all.
Yeah, right.
It's a different bird. But there are certain things that are expected. So I actually thought it looked like a sort of a trashed abandoned factory that had started having things moved into it.
Yeah. It turned out okay. Like I know from people like yourself and other people I've watched it turned out fine. But for me, it's just those little things that stick into my craw. Yeah. It's like, it's really annoying. Like there's lots of things every day. Like a director has to take so many concessions. Well, at least I do. I don't know if anyone else does. Maybe everyone else is like complete Nazis and they get their way no matter what. But every day it feels like, I'm like, and today's going to be these like massive, there's going to be 4 fireballs. Oh, look, I've only got 1 fireball. Okay. Today there's going to be 20 cars. Oh, I've only got 1 car. Okay. It's just like, I don't know if other people have tantrums about it or what, but I just have to go, okay. So it's just so many concessions. It's like, it's what they say about your film dying in all these different stages, because it's always like grand plans, then you end up with this and then try to make it. So I guess for me, it's just those days that stick out.
Well, we were talking to that Q80 director, and he said he had to use CGI explosion on these trucks, which he was really disappointed with because he waited 3 days. He had the pyrotechnics and the explosives guy all there ready. First day, the weather was no good. It was going to blow the ash and smoke over the city, so he couldn't go ahead. The next day, the wind blew the other way, but it was blowing it onto the other part of the city, and it's just the third day finally finished and couldn't get these explosion to happen because of safety concerns or what have you. So we finally ended up having to go, okay, fine, we'll just put CG on it. And there was another one where he had a 10-shot sequence to work through, but because of earlier problems they had with some of the cast, they had an hour and a half to do it in. So they turned this complex sequence into a single shot, which they took on the third
just a
one.
moving shot,
Last 5 minutes of light as the sun's going down, they managed to get the shot, and then the actors had to fly out that night, and they would never see them again. So it does sound like other people have these same issues.
People always say on set, they say it's like Casablanca before lunch and like Home and Away after lunch. Because you get there in the morning, you're like, I got all day, it's going to be great. Big wide thing, takes all around. You get to after lunch, you're like, oh mate, we got like 5 things to do before dinner. Everyone's like, okay, steady cam out the way, let's go. So it's crazy. I mean, like films like this scale in Hollywood would have like 3-month shoot. I shot this in like 5 weeks, so it's like mental. It's like every day you could look at the call sheet and it's like 2 pages worth of scenes you got to get that day, and you sort of scratch your head going, how the hell am I going to do this? Oh, I really love to get a crane shot or a drone shot or this, and they're like, no, you get one setup, pick your setup, that's it, that's what you got. So you make a decision, then you get at the end of the day, the producers watch it and they go, oh, that's the one you went with, and you're like, I hope it's right.
And so what was your intention? What did you want the audience to get out of Occupation?
I think you guys got what I wanted to get out of it. You guys explained it pretty well at the beginning. Like, I wanted, just to create a fun, a fun sort of romp through a situation that these characters encounter, and you sort of go with them on the journey. At the same time, I wanted to, make a stamp of an Australian action film, do something different with an alien invasion, or do what at least I wanted to do, because like you pointed out, Independence Day, it takes a long time for things to happen, and I wanted to get to it quickly, have a ground invasion, which you don't see that often, and have that little cool, thing at the end about the shaking hands and the aliens being a bit more like us rather than just these monster invaders that are supreme beings and can defeat us really easily and that. So yeah, I think that's what I wanted to get out of it.
So Occupation Rainfall, we've noticed that it's premiering in October, 30th in Perth. So how did this one come about? Like, how did this get the green light? Where, how'd you go with funding? How did this get started? Was it from the success of the first one, or?
Pretty much it was a success. And I know I wanted to talk about Rainfall, but I guess it's hard because no one's seen anything of it yet. But for me, I've been living it for like 2.5 years. It was from the success. I actually announced that this one before the first one actually came out, because once we came back from AFM and cut 15 minutes out of Occupation, we delivered it to the distributors, and it sat around for like 6 months until we could get like cinemas to find a spot to show it in July. So that was like a long wait for a film. Luckily, we had Monsterfest come on back then as well, and they put it as part of their programming in Melbourne and the Gold Coast and Brisbane. But yeah, it was a weird 6 months wait, and it was kind of odd because you're spending so much time before it and lead up, like editing every day and getting the AFM, and then having 6 months off and then going back to watch it in a cinema with people. Even then I was like, oh man, I could have cut that and I could have done this and I could have done that, because you have more time to think about it, or at least have fresh eyes. And I think that's a big thing. You got to have like fresh eyes. Like in Rainfall, I've made sure I've gone away for like a month to just let it sit and just go do anything else, even if it's still Rainfall, even if it's still doing emails or talking and meetings and visual effects, whatever, but not go and watch the film for like a month and then go back with fresh eyes and go, oh, Jesus, what was I thinking? Rather than just being like this rush. Oh, it could have been better. So it was a weird 6 months, but within that 6 months, we announced that it was going to have a sequel. I think a strategy there was to show people that there was going to be a longevity of this series, not just like a one and done. So you can actually, again, come along with these characters. And again, my whole idea about creating interesting characters. And then obviously that announcement helped us bring together more finance from more private investors. And people who were involved in the first movie jumped back on, which is always nice. Came out in July, and we literally started pre-production like the week after Occupation released. We were in pre-production on Rainfall. So it was like this whirlwind, like red carpet, and then straight into the next movie, which has been the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, because it's just mental. It's just a mental movie. This next one, it's like Occupation. I went in, as I said before, going, oh, let's make a small film, and it became bigger. This time I wrote a script that was massive. I just went straight for the jugular and was like, I'm just going to write what I want and we'll see what happens. And for better or worse, the crew around me went, we'll make your dream come true. And I don't know if they regret saying that now, because it's been like super hard. And so that's how this one came about. And I wrote it throughout that 6 months. I wrote this one. Actually, the ideas started coming to me while I was editing Occupation. I always thought it'd be a one and done. I was going to move on to like a cool sort of a movie kind of like Distraction, which has come out now with Chris Hemsworth, kind of like that. I had an idea, a script kind of like that back then. But throughout the editing process, watching those scenes of the aliens with their children and watching the handshake, I was like, you know what? There's something here that could go on more than just what this is. And so those ideas became the next movie. And the first drafts were very heavily, like pretty much like straight on from Occupation, like the same characters, the same beats, the same like straight on. Now it's sort of become a bit more, not detached, but it's definitely, you don't need to watch the first movie to see this movie. But if you do, you're richer for it. And if you don't, no loss, is how I've tried to structure this new one. Because we've had cast come and go, some cast aren't available, some cast aren't in the movies. Suddenly you get new cast, new characters. And I think it's, just got to steer into the skid. And another good favourite quote of mine is from Tony Scott, where he said, you have to be like a good antique dealer and just throw away your most valuable asset for a better one. So, I'm not, I always said to my guys, I'm not tied to anything. I've sort of put down what I am tied to, but if there's anything else, if you come up with a better idea, be my guest. So people are like, how about we change the look of the aliens? How about we change the blasters? Let's do a new version of the ships. I'm like, yep, whatever works. I'm not like, has to be the same. Because you got to keep going forward, got to keep pushing forward. So, yeah, you'll find a lot of differences with a lot of stuff in this movie.
So it sort of sounds like you're doing a little bit of a Alien and then Aliens, how it sort of like really jumped up and changed the format of the movie a fair bit, gave us bigger explosions, bigger effects, a bit of a take on the story. Or I also think about like Terminator and then Terminator T2, like both are great movies, but they kind of twisted them, didn't they, a little bit, and gave the audience an even bigger jab of kind of voltage in the storyline.
Yeah.
And that's what it sounds like you've sort of done here. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah. I definitely would akin it more to Alien and Aliens.
Yeah.
T1, T2, both awesome movies, but T2 is almost like the same movie, just a better version, or just Cameron had more money to make the version he wanted, so it's like, it was a great twist making Arnie the good guy.
Yeah.
But I think beat for beat, it's kind of like the same thing. But Alien and Aliens is definitely two different movies, like this, two different styles. So yes, I would definitely akin this more to Alien and Aliens, where it's bigger, crazy, more characters and everything else.
I've seen the YouTube, and they look great. The action sequences there, the little like unfoldy sword magic thing, and bits and pieces. Yeah, it's sort of it definitely gives that impression of stepping up everything. Like there's more. The aliens are bringing more to the scene. The humans are more committed. The whole thing sort of seems like this ramp up of everything. I'm very keen to find out where the storyline takes us. Having seen how the first one starts off as rebellion, war type of thing, ending off with sort of a bit of an alliance with one faction. So it'll be good.
If you like the whole bit with the aliens, you're gonna like Rainfall, because that's basically the genesis of like this whole movie.
Okay.
Is like, I was watching all the comments come in, people going, oh, that's stupid. Why would they join up with the aliens? Oh, that's, I like the aliens. I'm like, you know what? That's a real good debate topic. So let's make that like the whole debate of this whole movie.
Yeah, right.
So that's kind of what I've done there.
That's cool. I like that. Yeah.
We mentioned Monsterfest. You managed to get a simultaneous release this time around. So it's in all of the cities. We get it here in Perth this time, which is nice.
Yeah, which is good.
And this hasn't been done before. So how did you generate this relationship, or how did this come about? The
occupation went really well for the Monsterfest release. Like, we had sellout audiences in all the places we went and brought it to. And the head of Monsterfest also owns Monster Distribution, and they approached us just after we announced, or just before we announced the second one, and they wanted to pitch themselves as the distributor of this film. And I think it's a perfect fit, because they're genre fans and they know the audience, and they have the Monsterfest and everything else. So we decided to join up with them. So they're distributing the whole movie nationwide, and they pitched, doing a simultaneous release for an advanced world premiere screening. And I thought it was a great idea. And then the pandemic happened, and they've had obviously Melbourne got cancelled, unfortunately, so it won't be shown in Melbourne. But the rest of the country is going to get it, pending anything else that happens. I think it's going to be great. It's like, people who get to see it, they get to see it first there at Monsterfest, and then the nationwide release will happen after that at some point. We don't know yet because of the whole COVID situation. Films are getting pushed back every day. Black Widow and all these things are going to streaming. I'm keeping my film squarely wanting to go to cinema. I know some people at this point in time say, it's dangerous going to cinemas and that. I've been to movies recently and they've got their COVID safe plan, and I feel pretty safe in there. I'm mixing this film in Dolby Atmos. We've got an orchestra from London that did the score for it. It's all like, the last time Occupation was recorded digitally, the score of the movie and that, which was always something disappointing to me, because I'm a massive soundtrack fan. I drive around my car every day listening to Empire Strikes Back or Starship Troopers on the soundtracks and that. So it was great to have a composer that did the orchestra in London in actually like Hans Zimmer's room that he uses over there in one of the studios.
Wow.
And that, again, because of COVID, I wasn't able to go over there, but I was live streaming it on Zoom, and it was obviously a joy to hear my film's music played by 36-piece orchestra, all wearing masks, all doing social distancing, but but still hearing it is great. I actually can't wait to get the soundtrack myself because it's a pretty awesome soundtrack. So I'm still aiming squarely for a cinema release, and I'm hoping that, not to take anyone's joy away from movies getting pushed back, but I'm hoping that some of the American movies get pushed back might leave a bit of room for us to get released in Australian cinemas, and hopefully cinemas will welcome a large action film and like this.
On that with COVID, has there been a delay in the release, or has this always been the plan, like October 2020?
Looking at July originally, but even without COVID, that was pretty ambitious because we only finished shooting. We had to shoot it in block shooting this time because it was so big. Taking on board the whole film alone would just be massive for a budget that we could get together. So we did like 3 weeks in 2018, and then that was with Ken John, and then we had like almost like pretty much a year break, just finding more money. And that, which was hard itself to have a film broken up like that. And we came back and did another few weeks last year. And then now it's almost been another year just of post-production of doing all the visual effects and sound and everything else. So, it's been ambitious in itself. So I think now's the right time, even without COVID. But one thing it has helped us with, it was, again, if people have been affected negatively, that's obviously, I'm not trying to stamp on their parade. But for us, a lot of films went into shutdown. Luckily, we'd filmed our stuff, luckily, thank God.
Yeah.
So there was abundance of post-production crew that had been sort of stood down, and people who working on like Marvel's Shang-Chi in Sydney, or Elvis, the Elvis movie, or Thor, Love and Thunder, or all these films that are in production then got stood down. So then they sort of jumped over to us to say, hey, can I jump on board? Suddenly we got guys from ILM and guys from Weather and guys from all these great effects companies who are suddenly coming on board. And then so our level of visual effects have jumped up dramatically. So it was a bit of a win for us, and also with sound and the composer being available for us as well. So bit of a win. Gonna take him.
Has that allowed it easier to get into cinemas? Because as you said, like James Bond got bumped right back, and Disney is bumping back a lot of its films, which means you're going to have cinemas sitting there going, we don't have any films to show. And I know that the local cinemas here have been showing some classics, where their cinemas lining up sort of saying, a new science fiction action film.
Yeah.
Has that been that way? Or
They've sort of said to our distributors, if we were ready right now or a month ago, they would take us, we'd get every cinema in the country with a snap of our fingers. Unfortunately, we're not ready right now. We're still going. So I don't know we just don't know what's going to happen October, November, December. Yeah. I know Top Gun got pushed. It looks like Black Widow is going to get pushed. Wonder Woman got pushed back. So I don't know. I think, it's hard to say. I would hope that there might be some space and they might give us a chance to say, let's give, I'd love as many screens as I can get, obviously. Because it's a numbers game. It's great when Australian film, and I say great sarcastically, when Australian films come out and then people straight away cite how much money they didn't make. And it's like, well, it's a numbers game. If you give more screens, you might get surprised. Like Occupation came out in 13 screens. And it's ridiculous. It's like, how are you going to make any money? I think our screen averages was really good compared to other films. I think we were up there with most Hollywood films screen average wise. I drove around and watched lots of different viewings, and there was always a pretty good audience. But, we had stories in the paper saying that audiences are complaining on Facebook they can't see Occupation because it's only on once a day, or it's only on, some random cinema up North Brisbane, and everyone on the Gold Coast is like, well, I'm not going to drive all that far for a movie, and neither would I. If I saw a cool movie, I'd be like, oh, well, I'll just wait. But, it just affects everything. So I hope that this might be a chance to sort of stretch our legs and cast a wider net. Yeah,
you notice that, the Marvel movies or whatever, they'll have, 10 screenings a day, and then another movie, whether it's Australian or even just, a smaller American movie or whatever, and it's got one screening. So as an audience member, sometimes it's not plausible, to get to that one screening or whatever and support it.
Marvel, without those films, cinemas need that money. So I'm all for that. I mean, I go watch Marvel films as well, just like the next person. But I'm hoping that this might be an opportunity to stretch our legs.
Yeah, and change the script for Australian films. That epic idea that you're going for, definitely. I suppose probably just sort of finishing up a little bit, as a filmmaker, scriptwriter, producer, have you got any advice that you'd like to give to younger filmmakers out there? I know it's a pretty standard question, but what would be your sort of parting advice to someone that is younger, or a Luke Sparke 15 years ago? What would you like to say to him?
Don't do it. No.
Get a real job.
Quit. Run.
Yeah, no, look, it's a hard road. It's rewarding. Everyone has their own journey, so what happens to someone might not happen to the next person. I've had some pretty hard stuff to come up against throughout my journey, but then I've also, you have some great times as well. I guess the biggest thing is that if you want to commit to it. It can't really be you can't really fuck around with it. Really get a crew that back you. Surround yourself with positive people, because poison apples can spoil the whole bunch. And I've come up against that a couple of times, and I think that's a hard lesson to learn, especially when there's multiple poison apples. So you have a meeting and it sounds all good, sounds like a nice person, and second day on the film set, suddenly it's like horrible, and you're just like, oh, what have I done? So there's no way of figuring that out, but just always keep in the back of your mind of just really making sure that you click with the person. I think that's my biggest advice, because if you can surround yourself with people that really want to do what you want to do and watch your vision, that's a huge step forward. Because if you have people that are just always telling you no, it's good to get told no, and that's another thing. Good to get told no. Good to get told by people and sometimes that comes up with a better idea. Like Back to the Future. Great story, a good story of the making of that film. There's going to be this whole weird subplot where they go out to a nuclear bomb site, and the nuclear bomb powers the DeLorean, and it's like, you read it now and you think this is whack. Obviously, it probably would have worked, but not having that budget, they had to rethink the whole town situation and keep it all in the town, which obviously now really works as a classic. But yeah, surround yourself with people that can back you, they can tell you no, but ultimately all want the same goal. I think that's my biggest advice after everything I've been through.
Is there anything that you'd like to add to what we've talked about? Anything that you'd like to talk about with Rainfall, or is there anything you'd like to get off your chest? This is your opportunity.
I feel like I've talked about everything I could with Rainfall without anyone seeing it. I could go through the whole thing and be like, and there's this really cool part where this happens, but everyone would be like, I don't know what that is. I don't know what that means. Look, I guess for me, it's, for 2.5 years of my life with Rainfall, so I could talk about it till the cows come home, but maybe we'll save it for another chat.
Yeah, definitely.
Wait till November the 1st. Get everyone a chance to head to the cinema and watch it.
You might have to take a few days to watch it again, because it's just like, I was watching Reel 2 today. The films are cut up into 6 reels. I was watching Reel 2 and there's this like massive action sequence, and I rang up the sound guy at the end and he's like, "Can you watch it again?" I'm like, "No, I don't, because it's blown my mind." So yeah, it's very interesting. I think people are going to have multiple viewings just to see, just to watch it again, just to know what's going on, because it's just mental. But maybe not. Who knows? I guess my parting comments would just be just how much I like sci-fi, and just how much and films in general, and just the films I've grown up with, like Terminator. I mean, all the films you're referencing, obviously a huge part of my life. Total Recall, Paul Van Hoven. Yeah, I just really enjoy it, and I enjoy listening to podcasts like people like you. So I guess it all comes together in moments like this. It's great.
Fantastic.
Thanks. Well, thank you very much for being part of Space Brains. It's been awesome.
Thank you. Anytime.
And that was our interview. Next episode is a classic. We are watching what could have been the groundbreaking anime that broke into the West, Akira. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, you want to correct us or just get in touch with us, you can catch us on social media at Space Brains Podcast on Instagram and Facebook, Gravity Undone Twitter, or you can get onto our emails, which would be podcast@gravityundone.net. See ya.